Today is Pentecost, widely regarded as the birthday of the Christian church. It's the day when a group of frightened disciples of the crucified Jesus were huddled together in a room in fear, and all of a sudden, the Spirit bursts in on them. The symbols of Pentecost, as we heard earlier this morning, during our children's time, are wind and fire. All we need is earth. You know, earth, wind, and fire, think about it. Only in MCC can we celebrate Pentecost with paper flames, spiritually based pop music, belly dancing, traditional hymns, and more. We are like a spiritual Ginsu commercial. Or as I used to say back in the day, we're like Alice's Restaurant. We'll give it to you so many ways, you're bound to like one of them. Today is Pentecost, the birthday of the Christian church. Symbols, wind and fire. Is it any accident that every one of our birthdays that we celebrate with a birthday cake, we also celebrate with wind and with fire? You know, I don't think it's an accident. I think it's an ongoing reminder to us that the Spirit, in the form of that wind that burst in on the early disciples, in the form of the Spirit that hovered and raged over the waters of creation, is still with us. You know, sometimes we get the mistaken idea that we are alone in what we experience in life. Sometimes we can feel isolated. And you know, the oddest thing, when something difficult is happening in someone's life, you know the thing that they are most prone to do? Isolate themselves and stay away from church just when they need community the most. You know, we do that and then we wonder, what happened? Well, you know, it's up to us to let our brothers and sisters in on what's happening with us. That's how we get the opportunity to be genuine community. You know, Pentecost is about many things. Community is one of them. We're told in our reading from Acts that the disciples were all huddled together in one place. They were forming community. You know, we're told elsewhere in the book of Acts that they didn't even consider that they had their own private property. They held all things in common. That's community. You know, what happens when we stop regarding me as more important than us? When our view begins to shift beyond self and we begin considering the good of the body as being more important to us than whatever it is that we as individuals might be in need of. Ooh. The disciples were all together in one place, and they shared everything that they had. That's not worldly economics, that's spiritual economics. The world around us says the name of the game is to acquire and accumulate. Spiritual economics says what it's about is loving and caring and being there for one another. Being truly present in the lives of our sisters and brothers. And accepting every person for exactly and precisely who he or she is. It's about what Thich Nhat Hanh in one of our readings this morning called the capacity for loving, healing, and transforming. To be sure, Pentecost was a transformative event in the life of the early church. Instead of being huddled in a room with locked doors, living in fear, the disciples stepped out boldly into the street. They came out of that room. Don't miss the term. The disciples came out and they went into the streets. And of course there were people that didn't want to hear the truth that was proclaimed. Not that that ever happens to any of us when we come out. In fact, some people sneered. They said they're drunk. To which Peter responded, "Get real, it's only 9 o'clock in the morning." That's not in our gospel reading this morning, or our Acts reading, but perhaps it should be. But they stepped out boldly and proclaimed their truth. They began to speak in new ways as the Spirit gave them ability. You know, Pentecost for us is largely about community and about empowerment. It's about the opportunity to move beyond living lives grounded and rooted in fear and stepping out boldly to live out our truth. And to be sure, there are people who will sneer. There are people who will not get it. There are people who will not like it. But you know, some things are true whether you like it or not. That was certainly the case for the early church. And they stepped into that empowerment that the Spirit offered. Wind and fire. You know, we should remember every time we have a birthday that it's not just a celebration of the passage of another year, but it's a celebration of God's ongoing presence through the Spirit, alive and living in you. Every moment, every breath, every day. You know, talking about coming out this morning, in Jesus, in the life and ministry of Jesus, God came out. The God who had been perceived as a divine judge, exacting precise justice, requiring blood sacrifice of unblemished animals. This is who people understood God to be. The God who had been seen as a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day, came out as the intense lover of humanity. This is what we see in the life and the ministry of Jesus. In the healing of the man born blind. The question that was asked by the religious experts, the self-styled authorities of the day, was, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus said, neither. You know, instead, he says, you're asking the wrong question. This is not about judgment. This is not about condemnation. This is about the demonstration of God's love and healing power at work in the life of this individual. And then he proceeded to heal him. In the life and ministry of Jesus, God came out as the lover of humanity. What about another incident? The woman caught in adultery. By the way, where was the man? I'm just saying. But they bring to Jesus this woman caught in adultery, which the law given by God, they believed, they understood, required that she be stoned to death. In that moment, God came out through Jesus yet again. Not as the God of condemnation and judgment, that their ancestors had perceived, not as the harsh judge, but as the one who loves unconditionally. Who forgives without restriction. In one of the last things that Jesus did in his earthly life before his crucifixion, he met for a meal with his disciples. And we see yet another example. The God who had been perceived as the creator, sovereign of the universe, came out in Jesus yet again in a way that was unexpected, as he wrapped a towel around him and took on a role that was uncharacteristic. A role that in that day would have been reserved for a woman or a slave, as he washed the feet of his disciples. In this one act, Jesus transgressed the societal expectations of both gender and class. And in all these things, God came out in a way that was unexpected, and some people did not like. In offering unconditional forgiveness, it was a threat to the temple religious system, which lived on people bringing their sacrifices to the temple. And if people could just be forgiven, just like that, well, what would the priests live on? Worldly economics at work.